I am Joey Grant, co-founder of Game Time. We are the athlete discovery platform, helping athletes get opportunities. In this instance, we're the platform that powers the USA national team's digital combine, where athletes from all over the country can have their video information seen by national coaches to get selected for real opportunities. If you're transitioning from a sport, if you're learning about the sport for the first time, tune in, follow along, and that's what we're talking about here today out at the Bucks facility.
Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Scott Garber, co-founder of ProFluence Sports, the central hub for founders, investors, advisors that are shaping the landscape that create this beautiful environment for women's flag football to flourish.
Scott, what initially are the takeaways from just being here and seeing the inklings of this event that'll take place over the course of 4 or 5 days and host every female flag high school across the state? What are your first takeaways?
I mean, the energy. I mean, you got to start there. When you walk in, you just feel a different presence. It's so neat as a father with a young daughter to see the opportunities that are presenting themselves in the sport that me and you played. I don't think that, ever in my lifetime you would think that there would be such an ecosystem to create participation, competition, and opportunities for these girls to grow in a sport that was once dominated by men. So really exciting. And man, I'll tell you what, man, the girls are spinning it back there. Like, I saw some amazing catches already. So really excited to see, what the next few days look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And as another person in sports that has a daughter, and our daughters play together from time to time, but in this case could play in the biggest stage, which will be the LA 2028 Olympics, which is a lot of where this is going in terms of right now, 2025, over the next 2 years, they'll be fielding more and more athletes, more and more talent, both that are native to flag football. These are athletes that have been playing their whole life, but transitioning from other sports. We've seen basketball, we've seen track and field. What do you think about the make of athletes in this sport and how that differs from other more established sports?
Yeah, I mean, look at it. Like, I think it's a very athletic game, but the barrier to entry is very low. So now we are able to see a wide spectrum of athletes. I think it's very inclusive, but when we watch some of the core metrics that we would look at in a normal scouting combine to find who is a top performer, we're watching that translate really well into the flag game. And so it's really neat with what you guys test, the 40, the vertical, the broad jump. We're able to see those directly represented in the game. And I think that to me, it's all about exposure, Joey. I think there's a ton of amazing athletes. We just don't always know what sport is going to be the best one for us. And so, it's just really neat to watch it expressed in a bunch of different ways. And I'm a big proponent of playing multiple sports, so should add this one to the roster.
And how do you think about the level of support? We're here at the Bucks facilities. This is all hosted by the Bucks.
Yep.
Seeing the NFL, some of the biggest brands get back into growing a youth sport. How does that advantage the sport of flag football and what we could see over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it's imperative, as the whole sporting landscape is continuing to evolve and change. We're watching the big leagues up top start to put real attention, capital, with real oomph behind growing the grassroots of the game, not just here domestically, but internationally as well. I think that, sports like flag give the NFL the opportunity to expand beyond the domestic world or domestic game that we have right now into emerging markets like in Argentina, like in Africa, like in Europe. And like you said, going into the Olympics in 28, it's now becoming an international sport instead of just a sport we play here in North America, predominantly. So,
not just the support that a sport like flag football can get from the NFL or bigger players that are already established. They're already the biggest people. But I'm also curious your thoughts of how we're just seeing a general ecosystem in sports change. We're seeing a lot of private academies, facilities coming online, and these academies and facilities are looking for really quality athletes to service. How do you think about how all of these things can play together for a youth flag athlete?
Yeah, I think one of the bigger trends which is driving this is just movement, right? Like, we're seeing an overwhelming movement in the youth sports world to go ahead and just get kids to participate. Marry that with the shakeup of, the traditional path, right? Playing in your local municipality, then your high school to try and get a college scholarship, and the slim percent will play professionally. We're watching the landscape evolve and expand in a way that is providing different vehicles, both to go ahead and get an education, as you alluded to, in academies, but to also drive movement in a multitude of different ways. And so I think we're incredibly excited with the amount of capital that's being pumped into sports, with the amount of attention that is being put on, the overall well-being. And, we're such proponents of, if you adopt this behavior of staying active and playing and, being competitive, right, this will become a lifestyle. And so we're watching this not just cap out now at, after your high school or college career. We're watching adult recreation become a really prominent, way to continue to build community and stay healthy, whether that's flag football, pickleball, whatever that may be. But just incredibly bullish on the whole sporting ecosystem. And it's a renaissance right now. There's a lot of innovation happening, and, these ladies behind us are a pure recipient of it.
Yeah, and we're hearing a lot of things in sports, terms like NIL, name, image, likeness, just the marketability around an athlete. We've almost seen two separate worlds in terms of the male-dominated sports, the female-dominated sports, and how these marketing deals can impact and can accelerate. What would you think if you were to project that out 3 to 5 years? We're hearing, the Nikes of the world or different brands are getting involved heavily. Yep. What at the end of the day does that mean from a business perspective for the athletes?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think first and foremost, we got to go back to some of the origin stories to how we got here, right? And it's there's a lot of hard work, there's a lot of sacrifice that went in to go ahead and start to create a more equal and fair playing field, that is creating these opportunities. And so, I think that name, image, and likeness has a real commercial tint to it right now, which is really, exciting, right? It's a real lane for athletes to be able to earn. I'm very bullish as this landscape continues to expand and mature. It's really going to give athletes a lane to build their brand, and I think that is so pivotal when we talk about transitioning from sport into your next phase. Not just what can you do for the brand right now, but how do you build an audience by leveraging the sport and the community that's around it to then start to create ownership, for that brand that you created as the creator playing sports. And so I think that it's in its infancy. It's an exciting time to see the command that athletes hold and the presence that they hold at the table. I'm going to go back to saying it's imperative that we continue to educate. I think this creates a great lane to teach some of the skill sets of life that school traditionally has failed us on. Whether that is, building a brand, understanding business, financial literacy. And so I just think that it creates a really cool underbelly to teach these athletes life skills that go beyond the field.
Yeah. Well, let's shift real quick to the parents, because we're both parents, and we're set up here, we're recording, we're going to pull in athletes, we're going to pull in coaches, national team scouts, all of the influential people that are helping the sport go. But we just talked to a parent, and the question we asked her is, what do you want for your daughter's career in flag football? And her first question is, well, what could that look like? And so I think that's a testament to how new, how real time this is. What would you tell a parent? How are you thinking about it, again, in terms of a sport that you would think about how you would put them into the sport in general?
Yeah. So I think that first and foremost, it's, give your kids the opportunity to experience everything. Let them make the decision on, what, one, their passion, where it lies, and two, where the best opportunity is, right? So I think that it's a big education lane to let parents know that this exists. I think is the first one. The second one is it's imperative for resources to be there for parents to understand how to navigate a new ecosystem. Look at me and you come from this world, and I have a lot of questions, right? I couldn't imagine being the parent that, is trying to help put their kid in the best situation to succeed, but there's no real centralized place to go. So I think that a lot of this comes back down to having resources like Game Time meet the end user where they're at and assist them along the journey, and more importantly, empower them to feel like that they're part of this new wave and take ownership in carving out the path of what, U.S. flag football is going to be in the future.
We got our first guest.
My little sister, she played flag football. She the one who just told me they had girls flag football college. I ain't never know about that.
So you just learned about that. What's your first response to her? Are you like, have we applied? Have we talked to a college coach? What's your initial?
She ain't talked to no college coaches yet. I can't tell you. I ain't really talked to her about it, but she want to go through with it. She says she liked the sport. I agree with it.
When did she start playing, or when did you start supporting her on this journey?
When she just started her 9th grade year of playing.
And did she play any sports before this, or was this the first one that she picked up?
And Quavia played sports.
Yeah.
Yeah, she played a couple sports. I can't think of them right now. I think she played football actually for middle
Tackle
school,
football.
Right? Now she played middle school flag. They got flag at middle school.
Oh, gotcha. So that was her. And what
I
about
was playing
y'all?
high
You guys
school
play?
ball.
You play high school football?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what she saw that, and she was inspired by your career.
Probably. I don't know. Yeah, my cousin played though. Mario Williams played for he played for Tulane.
Oh yeah.
Very cool. Green Wave.
Mm-hmm.
Love it, man. Love it. Let me ask you this last question. What are you most excited to see out here today?
I'm trying to see who finna head top who. I want to see some real competitive. I want to see it all. I ain't gonna lie.
You want to see the athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see the flag game. As acrobatic.
It's my first flag competition tournament I came to. I ain't never seen this before.
Love it, man.
Yeah, I like it though. It look good out here.
It's got a good little vibe to it, doesn't it? Very cool, man. Well, any other questions?
No, I'm glad that we get to capture it together. And this is his first time coming to a competition event. And so for all you brothers out there, for me, I had to go to the competition, the cheerleading competition.
Oh, my God, the dance recitals, they were brutal.
Yeah, the most, that was an experience. But now you're seeing reverse, right? Now you're seeing the brother who had a experience playing high school football. He knows what the college recruiting process seems like. He's trying to equate that and learn, how does this relate to my sister and female flag? And I think that's a beautiful thing. And we got Coach Hernandez. Like I said, we're pulling coaches, athletes to dive into the game of flag. Coach Hernandez, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do both on the high school side and with the USA national team.
I've been in flag for 19 years now in high school flag. Started in 2007 as an assistant and then took over Alonzo in 2008. And with Alonzo High School, we've built a program that's kind of nationally known. And then aside from what we've done at Alonzo, I've started to work with the U.S. national teams, junior national team, 15U and then 17U, and have been a part of the growth on that end. So it's really cool kind of seeing high school merge into the kind of a national thing and then how the sport is growing across the country.
Yeah, how would you summarize 19 years? That's a long time. The last 15, 16 years versus the past 3 to 5 years. How has it changed?
It was the runway to the rocket ship, I think is what a lot of us talk about. The wave that the sport is on now compared to those of us who were kind of lifers and were there when it was just kind of a cool, unique thing where kids travel across the country and people are like, oh, is that Powder Puff?
Yeah.
Now kids travel across the country and they hear about like their cousin who is in Illinois and now they get to play. And it's just a different world now than it was for sure.
And how have you thought about athletes that you're looking for, athletes that have come out to the team, from previous to now? And what do you think when you think of, hey, this is the great kind of archetype of a flag athlete?
Yeah, I mean, starting when 15 years ago, you find the soccer kid or you find the basketball or softball kid and hey, if I get this kid dedicated to this sport, they're going to do a lot of cool things and they're going to find something new and they're going to grow and they're going to be great. Now, girls especially, they have opportunities. So my daughters have been playing since they're 5. So now we get a kid who, instead of a blank canvas as a 14-year-old, we get a kid that's already kind of refined and we just have to keep them involved in growing and not burn out. So it's different. And now when we go to different states, you see what they're experiencing now is what we experienced 15 years ago, and it's cool to see the energy that's now happening.
Yeah, we were just talking to a brother who had played high school football, and he was coming here to support his sister who was playing, right? This is a new dynamic. I was joking around. I went to see my sister's cheer competitions.
Yeah.
Now they're coming out to see their sisters play football. That's a big dynamic change for sure. What do you think about something that like the LA 2028, the road to that, what that is as an opportunity, and then even the change in the college space where now, flag athletes are playing in college. How does that change the general opportunities that excite people to want to join the sport?
Yeah, I mean, you have a target. You have a target. I mean, every other sport, there is a next thing you're trying to do. Yeah. And with flag, it was always, hey, you're going to have a lot of fun. Then you're going to go to college. And then you might be able to do some cool things in college, but that's kind of it. And now for the athletes who want that, they're going to have the ability to go to college and play. And then the uber elite athlete who wants to train and put in the work and differentiate themselves in that way, they're going to then have that opportunity with the Olympics. And then we know the level of college is going to continue to grow.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting time to not only be in it, but also to talk to younger families and people about what the future is going to look like.
Well, and that was going to be my last question. I'm a parent of 2 little girls, 3 and 1.
Okay.
So what would you tell parents who are evaluating their kids early on? What is kind of the message to what they should think about when they think about putting their kid in flag football?
Perspective. I mean, one thing is when I talk to a parent of a 12-year-old, they're like, she's going to be in the Olympics.
Yeah.
I love the goals.
Yeah.
But I think keeping perspective of the journey they want to be on. Like I hope they're having fun at 12. I hope they're learning and developing and they're enjoying their time.
Yeah.
But I do think different than 10 years ago, I think you can confidently say like, hey, you have a future in this sport. Whereas it's not just an activity. And if you want it to be your main thing, it can be your main thing, which is exciting and which is new.
Yeah, no, and we think about a lot, how do you help communicate to athletes what their strengths are and what they need to keep working on with new and emerging sports like this? What do you think is the 1 or 2 characteristics that you see athletes coming in that they have or they don't have, but is kind of a necessary ingredient? We've heard, from athletes who are on team sports, the teamwork, the stamina, the strength building. What comes to mind for you?
It's a speed sport, so an athlete with speed, is going to always have a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah.
But I think the other part is just an open-mindedness to development.
Yeah.
And no one's a finished product. And I think when we're in this hyper-intense youth sports world, a kid at 12 who's never been the best player on their team might think, okay, this is who I am.
Sure.
But at 12, you're not who you are at 14, 15, 16, 17.
Yeah.
And we want to hopefully encourage them to continue developing on their path because you never know when something's going to click and you're going to find a niche or simply just work hard enough to grow into a very strong athlete and something that works for your skill set.
We're going to dive a little bit into just your background. So tell us a little bit of just your athletic journey in general. I want to hear what sports you started in and then how that kind of morphed out into the middle high school type.
Yeah, so quite literally played every sport. If there was a stick, a ball, a stick, a ball, a puck, I was playing it, all of the above. But my true love and passion was hockey. I was a goalie, grew up in South Florida. My dad is actually from Canada, so I inherited this hockey culture, played roller, would go up north and play ice, and quickly found out as I got older, one, it's a very expensive endeavor. It's very time consuming. And that being in Florida, if you play football, there's a better chance for you to go to the next level than hockey. So 9th grade, I figured out that I could kick the football through serendipity. The varsity punter actually got kicked off the team right before the first game. I got pulled up from JV and my first football snap, I put the ball on the 2-yard line.
Wow.
I didn't even really know if it was good or not. I was a football fan by proxy, and then quickly fell in love with the craft and the art of what this, punter, kicker lifestyle was. And so it was very in line with who I am as a person, a key player, but, what
about hockey transition to kicking? Or I guess what was natural, what was stuff that was foreign and you just figured it out?
It was the position. I was a goalie, so I became really comfortable with being my own coach and being my own sort of regulator. I didn't have to worry about the team. The team would go do things, and then I had to go do my own routine in order to make sure I showed up the right way. So it was really being comfortable being by myself.
It's almost segmented from the team in your own position that needs a specific thing to find success.
100%, but it was also having the spotlight on you,
Yeah.
right? Whether you were the goalie that made the save and you won the game, or you let the last penalty shot in and you lost the game, you had to be able to go ahead and deal with the highs and lows. And, being a punter, all eyes are on you, right? And you're typically playing, not typically, you are playing when the team is not performing how it's supposed to. So even your best rep, right, is still like, great, you just did your job. So that was it was a thankless position for a long time, and you had to be okay just going back and, mastering the craft, and finding ways to build with the team and become a part of it.
It's even almost more thankless than offensive line. I think it is more thankless.
100%.
Absolutely, on an absolute basis.
100%.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So, hockey background, then you come into football. How quickly do you start thinking of stuff like playing at the next level, playing at college? You mentioned that football was just a little bit one-to-one. Were you thinking about that at all for hockey, or was that still just love of the game? When did you start thinking about the opportunity?
No, it was early, and it was early from the standpoint of like when you played hockey growing up, there was a direct path to juniors, right? And then it was always the goal to go, use sport to get an education, and that was something we talked about in my household a lot, where it's like, how do you take this thing that you're really good with and apply it to something that'll propel you in life?
Yeah.
And it wasn't the ultimate decision as to why I stopped playing hockey, but it became pretty clear, like, here's a clear path to attaining a scholarship. As I got deeper into the world of punting, went to individual combines, and started to get educated on what this whole ecosystem was all about.
Yeah, talk to me about that exposure, just as like the sport itself is a little bit segmented.
Yep.
Talk about the exposure platform of what's available to kickers and punters, as well as the training. Was it position training? Was it more all-encompassing physical training? What did that breakdown look like?
Yeah, so, I mean, the funny thing is your strength and conditioning coach, until recent, was pretty generic, right? If you played football, this was the program that you participated in. Whereas that was really off kilter for being a punter, right? Like, you needed to focus more on flexibility and core strength, not how much can I bench press. And so freshman, sophomore year was very generic. Hey, I'm playing football, I'm enjoying it, I got to play on varsity. And you started to go to games and you would realize, like, hey, I'm doing it. Like, in the world of punting, we would turn a ball over, right? It's when it would spiral up and spiral down. Yeah. And it was like, wow, like, I'm doing something at a little bit more elite level than the competition.
Sure.
I got introduced through the football world to Chris Saylor kicking and punting, which is where they have a national exposure event out in Las Vegas. And I got to go put my talents against the rest of the community. And it was at the end of my sophomore year that I realized, hey, this is more than just going out and playing high school football. There is a clear path. And I think seeing is believing, man. I saw the Brian Angers and the Tress Ways, going out there and kicking the ball, moon balloons over the light pole. And these guys were going to Cal and Wisconsin. And so it was the clearest path to a scholarship. And I think that was always me, for me, it was, what keeps you going, right? The love of the game is one thing, but when you do it at a high level, it's exhausting, right? So what is that next opportunity that keeps you coming back? And I did well in a couple national events, and
that's
crazy
what I
recruiting
get into
expense.
is when were the moments to where what you could envision from the ability to get there were seen in reality? What opportunities did you take advantage of that got you seen?
Yeah, some of it is opportunities that present themselves to you and ones that you put yourself in. And so, it's funny, just a few miles away, Lakeland Dreadnoughts, perennial powerhouse here in Florida.
High school jumbotron.
Yeah,
always
Tennessee checkered end zone. I mean, it was a college environment.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, we pulled up on a bus and they had on the scoreboard 70-0 when we pulled in. And I think we lost 71-0.
They were foreshadowing? Or
was but you know what? You got to taste what elite football was like. And it was funny. We played them right after we played you guys, which, that's a whole nother story. But, look at, like, I went to school in Port St. Lucie. We were not a juggernaut. And, Lakeland had 15 guys that were Division I. I think 8 of them went to the University of Florida. Yeah. I got to play against Chris Rainey. And Chris Rainey, for all of you guys that don't know, was a titan on the punt return side.
He was the high school Reggie Bush.
Yeah, or Percy Harvin. I mean, he made it happen. Yeah. And I held him to, I think it was 1 or 2 yards of return yards. And so the cool thing is when you show up and the right eyeballs are around, opportunities present themselves. But you don't know who's in the stands. You don't know who's watching unless you're at that game. And I think there were 19 scouts from Division I schools.
Yeah, you know what you're playing for.
And so the spotlight was on and I performed. And so that really created a snowball effect into thrusting me into the national spotlight. And yeah.
How many punts did you hit in a
13
game where
punts.
you 13 punts?
13 punts. I don't think we got the ball past the 50-yard line.
Yeah, so that is the definition of the head coach. That's his least favorite stat.
Yep.
And that's your favorite stat because that's what you have to measure your
And we got to touch on it, right? Because I always struggled when I would have a good game. It typically correlated to the team having a poor performance. Yeah. And so I think success is variable, right? And that was a big transition into the work world where it's like, just because you did your job right, if we're not all aligned on what the unilateral goal is of the organization, then you can have an internal celebration, you can't have an external celebration. And I think that too often in work now, we want the pat on the back and we lose sight of what the bigger goal is. So it was a really interesting correlation that I didn't make until later in life.
Well, and that's all of what these podcasts are about, is how we identify things that translate from sports outside of sports. And I think that's a really nuanced one that I've never heard before, but I think is absolutely right. How does individual success correlate or differ from the team success? And at the end of the day, you have to align both yourself. You can't be relying on other people to do that.
100%.
Interesting. So how did you start getting contacted by colleges, and what was the selection criteria or the decision-making process to choose where you wanted to play?
Yeah, so we're going to go throwback. I had custom DVDs that I would send out in manila envelopes and, the recruiting one-pager. And, that was sort of at the front end of my career on the exposure side. And then, on the back side, it was very relationship driven, right? Yeah. So you would start to build with, GAs, you'd start to build with recruiting coordinators, and it naturally just progressed into, head coaches. I think the hardest part is you as an athlete think you're in control, but it's just an illusion. With the volatility of coaches moving through the ecosystem, it's truly about developing and forging relationships with the human and not the school. And I got to learn that along the way, and ultimately how I ended up at South Alabama.
South Alabama. And what would you say you took away from your career there? And then, get into a little bit of how you got to experience just outside of the physical sports, even into the business side.
Yeah. The biggest takeaway is I showed up at South Alabama and was sold on a dream that it was piles of dirt and a vision of what this program was going to be, with the binding agent of there's 105 guys that are showing up that are hungry to build, and we get to go back to Neyland Stadium and play Tennessee in 5 years. And so it was really neat. That was my first startup experience. And as a punter, it's sometimes challenging, not as much in today's game, to become a part of the team, to be able to go ahead and, immerse yourself. When you're building culture and tradition, you get the blank slate. And so you get to define what is normal. And so I got to become a captain of my football team. I got to go ahead and put some of my beliefs into the legacy of what now South Alabama is growing and has become. And so it's just one of those things, man, where, if you're a builder, you just love to build. And I got to do that in sports, which then transitioned right over into business. And look at all these future builders, man. I mean, how cool is this? Learning life lessons through a kid's game is so cool.
Oh, it's everywhere. And again, the lessons only get more relevant. And I think that's the contradiction about sports, is you only know that the older you get.
100%.
And you can never make it as relevant, because it was like sitting in these athletes' shoes where they're thinking about what's for dinner or what these things. They're not thinking of how it impacts the lifelong nature of their journey. So what else, as you transition from playing in college, going from a college startup to a real startup, what does that journey look like, and how did that help shape your mind of what was necessary to build in sports?
I think that what sports teaches you is that we as humans crave community. And whether you're playing, whether it's through fandom, whatever that community is, you want to be a part of something that's bigger than you. And so I was able to go ahead and transition from building a team to now going into the business world with that same idea of like, this is so much bigger than what you're building. And how are you going to aggregate and build community utilizing sports as this amazing vehicle? And so I think I had the right perspective to go into business and realize that money is a tool. It's not a destination. And you have to have, like, the stakes have to be high enough in order for it to matter. And so I think that as I take my football mentality into my business mentality, it's people over everything. And this is a human first game. And if you do the right things for the right reason, I think nothing is impossible to go ahead and conquer. And so, look we turned around, we beat Mississippi State, right? Which everyone said there's no way in hell that's happening. And then, you turn around and you go sell a business and they say no way that's going to happen. And, with ProFluence, this is just an aggregation of all of a lifetime of work to take advantage of the new frontier of business.
And letting every position shine. I know a big thing about ProFluence is the builders, the founders, investors, advisors in the space, how are all each connecting in a way that's actually helpful.
Yep.
It's interesting that you're a nucleus. Talk a little bit about what you see connecting those stakeholders.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than what's happened in sports. It's become super fragmented, from the player's lens, but also in the business lens. And I think we're in this renaissance period where, the amount of money and perspective that's coming into the sporting ecosystem is tremendous, but we're quickly realizing that there's not this central hub for builders to be able to go ahead and gain insight and education to make sure that you're actually solving a problem that exists in the market, not just through your own bias. As capital is coming into the space, right? Like, we're huge proponents of understand the origin story, right? How did we get here to this current state so that we don't make the same mistakes over and over again? We continue to push the needle and create a better sporting environment. And so, we just saw this massive gap where, we do this for advisors in sports and we do this for executives in sports, but there was really no one servicing the picks and shovels that literally create the foundation for, events like this to take place. And so I think it's just a very empowering time to watch how 360 it is. Athletes moving from the field to the boardroom, I think, is a really cool trend. Yeah. We're watching new sports spin off of traditional ones with new formats. And I just think that, like, this is the coolest time to not just be building in sports, but participating in sports with, all the opportunities that exist.
And how should athletes think about their role in the ecosystem? Obviously, we're seeing name, image, and likeness, other things. How do you visualize athletes making the most out of sports?
You're a key player, right? You're a key player both on the field and off the field. And so I always say the marketability of the brands that you're playing for help you punch above your weight. And so it's taking advantage of the assets and the resources around you to help develop your personal brand, to then take that perspective, which is so rich, and now bring it back to a business application and partner up with or build, very relevant technologies and solve relevant problems. And so we're watching this 360 life cycle of an athlete, and you're no longer just the rock and jock model. It's, there's intelligence behind what these athletes are doing. And I think it's imperative that we, continue to incorporate them in what's going on.
And where can athletes interact with the ProFluence brand? What's the best way for them to get involved? If they, again, on this podcast, we talk about transition. How are you transferring your talent? How should they think about or interact with ProFluence on that journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think our social content's great. The monthly panels that we hold, bringing all of these personas together. And then, through really cool partnerships like with a Game Time and, different NIL platforms to go ahead and start to break down the barrier. Sports is a relationship-driven industry. It's not about connections. It's how deep is the relationship. So the more we can democratize that and create meaningful engagements, I think the better everyone is. So it's being intentional. It's reaching out and, incumbent upon us to make sure that we send the ladder back down to, make sure these athletes understand the evolution of, a flag football or whatever sport they're playing.
Yeah. And from both an athlete lens and a builder lens, thank you for all the work that you guys are doing, man.
Appreciate
Scott,
you, man.
Appreciate you.
This is great.
Boom. There you go.